Get your broke ghetto ass out of my lobby before I call the police. Trevor Lang plucked the sleek black card from Naomi Carter's hand and flicked it onto the marble like trash. His polished Oxford shoe came down hard, grinding the centurion's metal against the floor as if he were putting out a cigarette. "This is humiliating for everyone," he said loudly, making sure the entire lobby could hear. "Next time you want to play rich, at least buy a fake card that looks believable. Whatever corner store you bought this counterfeit from, sweetheart, return it and ask for a refund." The front desk clerk, Chloe, let out an anxious little laugh. "Should I grab a mop? That card probably came with bed bugs." Naomi's worn canvas sneakers stayed rooted. Her faded jeans and plain button-down had apparently triggered every classist, racist reflex in the room. 11:47 p.m. shone in neon red on the digital clock above the front desk, counting down the seconds until they buried their careers. None of them understood that tonight. Every smirk and insult was a receipt with their name on it. They had no idea they were dismantling their own futures in real time. "Have you ever been called trash in a building you technically owned?" Naomi bent, slowly, and retrieved the flattened card from the floor. The black metal felt warm where Trevor's soul had pressed. She straightened, slid it gently into her scuffed leather messenger bag, and didn't bother dignifying his tantrum with a response. "I have a reservation for the penthouse," she murmured, placing her phone on the marble counter so the screen faced Chloe. The confirmation email blazed back at them. "Sterling Crest Hotel, Penthouse Suite 45501. Guest, Naomi Carter." Trevor gave it the quickest, faked glance in history. "Anyone can Photoshop this crap. You think I'm dumb?" Behind him, Chloe clattered nervously at her keyboard. "Let me check the system. She squinted. "There is a Naomi Carter in here, but..." Her fingers froze. "But what exactly is the problem?" Naomi asked. Chloe flicked her eyes from the monitor to Naomi's outfit, then toward Trevor, seeking permission to be cruel. "This just can't be right," she stammered. "The real Naomi Carter would be..." She waved vaguely at the chandeliers. "Different. Important." Trevor leaned over the desk, voice dripping with practiced condescension. "Let me simplify this for you, darling. This is a 5-star property. We host Fortune 500 CEOs, major artists, foreign ministers." He swept his arm around theatrically. "Take a good look," he said, motioning toward the sparkling crystal chandeliers, the imported Italian marble, the massive hand-carved mahogany desk. "Do you see anyone else here who looks like they just finished a shift at a strip mall laundromat?" Naomi glanced at her phone. 11:52 p.m. 7, maybe 8 minutes left before her conference call with Nakamura Industries in Tokyo. 7 minutes to close a $200 million manufacturing deal that had taken half a year of relentless negotiation and midnight flights. 7 minutes before that deal either solidified her company's global footprint or collapsed because a night manager wanted to play security hero. The air in the lobby shifted as guests began to tune in. An older white couple in couture evening wear leaned close, whispering behind diamonded fingers. A man in a $1,000 suit paused mid-voicemail, phone held away from his face as he watched. On a velvet sofa nearby, a young woman, Jessica Hanin, angled her phone and tapped the Instagram live button. "Y'all," Jessica whispered, barely moving her lips, "I'm witnessing some wild discrimination at this so-called luxury Chicago hotel right now. This is next level. Her viewer count crept up 47, 89, 156. Trevor turned back to Naomi, posture loosening as his confidence grew. "I've been in luxury hospitality for 8 years," he bragged. "I can smell a scam from the other end of the lobby. The way you carry yourself, how you talk, that bargain bin bag, none of it fits." He jabbed at her sneakers. "You know what those shoes say?" he scoffed. "They say you wait at bus stops. They say you hit thrift stores on half-off day. They say the closest you've come to a place like this is wiping tables." Chloe snickered behind her palm. "Trevor, stop," she said, not sounding like she meant it. "But I mean, you're not wrong." Naomi opened her messenger bag just enough for herself to see. The edge of a first-class United boarding pass. Chicago to Tokyo, 6 a.m. departure. That flight was the capstone of months of calls, site tours, and negotiations with Nakamura's board. Next to the boarding pass, the matte edge of her Centurion card, the same one Trevor had just tried to stomp out of existence. "I realize you're busy," Naomi said, voice calm, almost bored, "but I really do need to check in." Trevor's laugh sliced through the lobby. "Busy? Honey, I've got all night. We can take all the time we need to walk you through reality." He leaned in closer, breath carrying a mix of coffee, mint, and arrogance. "This isn't some community center or overnight shelter where you just walk in and claim space. This is private property." He tapped his name tag. "My property to protect while I'm in charge." The assistant manager, Linda Park, stepped out from the back office with a stack of printouts. Trevor immediately latched onto her elbow. "Linda, we've got a situation," he announced, raising his voice so it bounced off marble and glass. "Someone's trying to hustle their way into the penthouse with fake paperwork and a sob story." Linda's gaze flicked over Naomi from head to toe. The verdict was instant, guilty of not looking expensive enough. Her lip curled as she cataloged the worn jeans, the simple shirt, the lived-in bag. "Ma'am, I'm going to need proper ID," Linda said, voice sharpened for the audience. "Government issued, and something that proves you can actually pay for a $2,800 a night suite." Jessica's viewer count ticked past 300. Comments poured onto the feed. "It's 2025, and this is still happening. Tag a Sterling Hotels right now. This staff is racist AF. Somebody call corporate and a lawyer. Get the manager out here now. She deserves better than this." Naomi pulled out her driver's license and placed it on the counter. Linda held it like a piece of evidence, tilting it toward the light, examining the hologram, even lifting it to her nose, as if she expected it to smell counterfeit. "This could be fake too," Linda declared, loud enough for the nearest guest to hear clearly. "Identity theft is a felony." She turned to Trevor. "Should we call the police now or wait for security?" Trevor nodded with smug approval. "Smart," he said. "We can't be too careful. People will try anything for a free night in a suite." He pulled out his phone. "Chicago Police Department? Hi, this is Trevor Lang, night manager at the Sterling Crest Hotel. I need to report a suspected fraud situation." The clock above the desk flashed 11:54 p.m. 6 minutes left. Naomi watched Trevor's little performance, the way he emphasized manager like it was a royal title. He kept flicking his eyes toward the other guests, feeding off their attention. This wasn't about policy. It was a show for him. Chloe huddled closer to Linda. "Should I cancel the penthouse reservation?" she whispered. "Open it for someone who, actually fits?" "Absolutely," Linda answered. No reason to hold it for someone who clearly can't pay. Naomi's phone buzzed. A message from her assistant. Nakamura Industries dialing in, 6 minutes. Conference room prepped. Are you ready? Naomi looked at Trevor and Linda, arms folded, bodies angled toward her like gatekeepers in an old castle painting. Behind them, Chloe's fingers moved quickly, likely freeing up the penthouse. In the seating area, Jessica's livestream climbed past 800 viewers. Outrage and encouragement mingled in the comments, but the real damage was expanding far beyond this polished lobby. "I'm ready," Naomi whispered under her breath, glancing up at the clock. 11:55 p.m. Trevor snapped his fingers toward the far corner. "Andre, we need you up front." Security Chief Andre Phillips stepped out from behind a marble column, his 6'2" frame filling the space. At 38, Andre had seen more than enough late-night drama in hotel hallways. Still, something about this scene felt off, wrong in a way that made the hair on his arms stand up. "What's going on, Trevor?" he asked. Trevor pointed at Naomi as if he'd caught an intruder scaling the roof. "We've got a scammer trying to bluff her way into the penthouse using counterfeit docs and a fake card. She's been loitering here 20 minutes, refusing to leave." He gestured in Naomi's direction with both hands. "Look at her, Andre. Does she scream penthouse guest to you? Seriously, look!" Andre's gaze met Naomi's. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me." "Officer Phillips," Naomi said quietly, reading his name tag. "Before you make a move, I strongly suggest you check your employee handbook. Section 14.3 in particular." Andre frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Just read it," Naomi replied, voice still even. "Please." Trevor rolled his eyes so hard it was almost theatrical. "She's trying to throw around legal jargon," he said. "Classic scammer move. Watch a few YouTube videos about tenant rights, and suddenly you're an expert." Jessica's live stream jumped to 1,800 viewers. She whispered to her phone, "This is escalating fast, y'all." They called security on this woman for literally existing in the lobby. "The racism is blatant. I'm shaking." Comments flew by. "Record everything. Tag the news. Sterling Hotel's about to get dragged. Where are the civil rights lawyers? Cancel this brand." Linda snatched Naomi's phone off the counter. "Let me see this so-called reservation again." She scrolled through the email, eyes narrowed. "This is sophisticated. Whoever built this fake really did their homework. Look at the formatting, the letterhead, even the confirmation number structure. But we know it's bogus because," Linda waved absently toward Naomi, "because obviously, look at her." "It isn't fake," Naomi said, still calm. "Sure it's not," Linda snorted. "And I'm Beyoncé." She turned to Trevor. "Should we call the police now? This is clearly criminal fraud." Trevor basked in the spotlight, speaking loud enough for everyone, including the phones, to catch every word. "You know the best part of this job?" he announced. "Protecting real paying guests from people who think they can just take. He pointed toward the older couple in evening wear. "The Whitmores have stayed with us 15 years. They spend $3,000 a night and never cause trouble. They dress correctly, respect our rules." Mrs. Whitmore shifted uneasily, while her husband nodded along. Trevor ramped up the theatrics. "Then you get people like this, who stroll in with an attitude and a story, acting like they deserve a penthouse they obviously can't afford." He flicked his chin toward Naomi's bag. "That thing? I've seen better at gas stations. And those shoes?" he added. Those are work shoes. Clock in, clock out shoes, not penthouse shoes. Chloe giggled. Trevor, you're awful, she said, half laughing. But you're kind of right. Maybe she does own the place, a voice called from across the lobby. Heads turned. A black man in a tailored business suit strode in from the revolving doors, suitcase in hand, briefcase stamped with the logo of a major consulting firm. Trevor's expression hardened. Sir, this is a private matter, he snapped, posture tightening. A private matter? The man repeated, laughing softly as he glanced around at the circle of guests and glowing phone screens. Half of Chicago is watching this on Instagram right now. This is about as private as Times Square on New Year's Eve. Andre stepped slightly forward. Sir, I'm going to need you to... To what? The man cut in. Stand here quietly while I watch your staffs harass a woman in the lobby. I'm a guest, too. Room 917. Been here 3 nights. Was on business. He flashed his keycard toward Andre. And in 3 nights, this is by far the most disgusting behavior I've seen from this hotel. Trevor's confidence wobbled for the first time. He hadn't planned on facing a witness willing to go toe-to-toe with him. Sir, you don't understand, Trevor sputtered. This woman is trying to commit fraud. What I understand, the businessman replied, is that you've been humiliating a black woman for over half an hour without any real evidence, all based on how she looks. Guests drifted closer. A family with 2 teenagers hovered awkwardly, torn between curiosity and discomfort. A couple in their 40s filmed while whispering updates to each other. Naomi glanced at the clock. 11:57 p.m., 3 minutes until Tokyo. 3 minutes until the biggest deal of her year. Linda was still clutching Naomi's phone when her own started buzzing like it was on fire. She checked the screen and went noticeably pale. Trevor, she whispered, we might have a serious problem. What problem? He demanded. Corporate just texted, Linda said, eyes darting across her screen. They're asking about some situation involving discrimination complaints tonight. Trevor scoffed. Probably routine. Auditors love their little alerts. No, Linda insisted, voice shaking. They've been monitoring social media mentions of the brand, she swallowed. They want a full report of any incidents involving racial discrimination. She lifted her eyes slowly toward Naomi, then back to her phone. They're asking specifically about tonight, about the Chicago property, about the night shift. Trevor's face drained. That doesn't make sense, he muttered. How would they even... Because it's trending, the businessman called out. Because thousands of people are watching this mess live. Jessica's viewer count hit 4,200. The hashtag #Sterling Hotel Racism began popping up on X and TikTok, boosted by local influencers who knew exactly how to spin a viral scandal. Andre glanced at his own phone, thumb scrolling rapidly. His expression darkened with each line he read. Trevor, he said slowly, we need to rethink this. You're joking, Trevor snapped. Since when do we let potential criminals set policy? Since there's a viral video of this entire interaction, Andre replied. Since corporate is apparently watching in real time. Since this woman just referenced a handbook section I'm literally reading. He held up his phone showing a screenshot. Section 14A3. Immediate termination for discriminatory behavior. Why would she know that? Trevor? Trevor's jaw clenched. I don't care if the president is watching, he hissed. This is my lobby, my call. I've run this hotel 3 years without a single complaint. That's Not entirely accurate, Chloe said softly, staring at her monitor. There've been, 17 formal complaints about our location in the last 6 months. Trevor spun around. What? And most of them mention you, she added, voice almost inaudible. The lobby fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the soft ping of Jessica's notifications. Naomi looked around, the Whitmores whispering, the business traveler recording, the bored teenagers fully invested now. Jessica nearly vibrated in her seat as her viewer count pushed toward 5,000. The clock read 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes until Tokyo. 2 minutes until a multi-hundred-million-dollar deal shifted the landscape of global manufacturing. 2 minutes until Trevor discovered exactly who he'd been trying to throw out. Naomi reached into her messenger bag and pulled out a slim leather portfolio. "Officer Phillips," she said gently, "that handbook section you're reading? You might want to read it aloud for everyone." Andre brought the handbook app back up, cleared his throat, and let his voice carry. Section 14.3. Any employee engaging in discriminatory behavior based on race, gender, religion, or perceived economic status is subject to immediate termination without severance, in addition to personal legal liability for reputational damage to the company. Trevor's complexion went from pale to ghostly. "Why are you reading that out loud?" he demanded. Naomi calmly opened the portfolio, like a magician ready to reveal her final card. She slid a single sheet of paper onto the counter. The Sterling Hotels Group letterhead gleamed under the crystal chandeliers. Trevor squinted at it. "What is this supposed to be?" "Your most recent performance review," Naomi replied. "Revenue under your management is down 23% this quarter. Average guest rating, 2.3 out of 5. Annual staff turnover, 89%. Her fingertip landed on one line. Average nightly occupancy, 67%. The industry standard for a property like this is 85. The numbers spoke louder than accusations. Linda leaned in beside Trevor, her own face draining as she scanned the page. "How did you even get this?" she whispered. "These files are confidential." Naomi slipped another rectangle onto the marble, a business card. Black letters on heavy white stock, elegant and simple. Naomi Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Carter Holdings. Trevor stared at the card, then at the report, like they were written in a language he didn't recognize. "I don't understand," he said weakly. "Let me help," Naomi said. She pulled out an iPad, tapped a few times, and rotated it so the nearest guest could see. The Sterling Hotels Group corporate leadership page filled the screen. Her professional headshot smiled back. The same woman standing here now, except in a tailored suit instead of jeans and sneakers. Naomi Carter, majority shareholder. Carter Holdings acquired Sterling Hotels Group for $847 million on March 15, 2025. Ms. Carter now holds a 67% controlling stake in the luxury brand. Silence swallowed the lobby. The soft whir of the air conditioning, the faint tick of an antique grandfather clock, the quiet chime of Jessica's incoming comments all suddenly seemed unbearably loud. Then everything broke at once. Jessica's chat exploded. "She owns the hotel. No way. Somebody check on Trevor. Best plot twist ever. Cancel the popcorn. I need oxygen." Trevor's knees nearly gave out. He clutched the counter, knuckles white against the dark stone. That's impossible," he stammered. You can't be." "Can't be what, Trevor?" Naomi asked, voice still smooth, controlled. "Can't be successful? Can't run a billion-dollar company? Can't afford the penthouse in my own hotel? She gestured to her outfit. Or did you mean I can't look like this and still be your boss's boss's boss? Andre took a small step back, hand resting reflexively on his radio, not to call for help, but because every bit of his training told him he had just watched multiple careers implode in under an hour. Linda's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish out of water. Ma'am, if we had known, there was just no way to recognize you weren't wearing. Wasn't wearing what? Naomi asked. A tiara? A sash that says billionaire? Tell me, Linda, what exactly should a successful black woman wear to be treated like a basic human being in her own properties? The businessman from room 2819 started clapping slowly, the sound sharp in the stunned quiet. Ye hands down, he said, best live hotel drama I've ever witnessed, and I practically live in hotels. More guests whipped out their phones, realizing the moment was bigger than a late-night inconvenience. The Whitmores looked mortified, avoiding Naomi's eyes. The family with teenagers recorded openly now. Chloe's fingers flew over her keyboard, eyes wide. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, the reservation is real. Penthouse suite paid in full 6 months ago." She swallowed. Payment from Carter Holdings corporate account, $16,800 for 6 nights. I should have checked everything properly," Chloe muttered, more to herself than anyone. Trevor's voice suddenly cracked into a higher register. "Ma'am, if you had just told us who you were—" "I did," Naomi said. "I told you my name was Naomi Carter and that I had a confirmed reservation. You decided that wasn't enough." She pulled another document from her portfolio and laid it beside the performance report. "This is the acquisition agreement, March 15th, 2025. Carter Holdings purchased Sterling Hotels Group. $847 million in cash. We now own 847 properties in 23 countries." Naomi's finger moved calmly, landing on Trevor's name tag. "Trevor Lang, employee ID 4471. You work for me." She turned to Linda. "Linda Park, employee ID 4203. You work for me." Her eyes shifted to Chloe. "Chloe Barnes, employee ID 4898. You also work for me." Trevor tried to stiffen his spine, desperately reaching for some scrap of authority. "Ma'am, there's been a terrible misunderstanding," he said. "If we could just—" Naomi lifted her hand and the words died in his throat. "The only misunderstanding here was yours, Trevor. You decided that a black woman in casual clothes couldn't possibly belong in your lobby. You chose to double down on that assumption in front of witnesses, on camera, and with impressive enthusiasm." She checked her phone. 11:59 p.m. "Before I take my call with Tokyo in about 60 seconds, let me explain why I came here tonight in person." She reached back into her portfolio, unhurried. She withdrew a thick, printed email chain and placed it on the marble like a final card in a winning hand. The subject line was bold, impossible to miss. Behind her, Jessica zoomed in with her phone, giving her thousands of viewers a better look. Guests leaned closer, their faces lit by the glow of their screens and the crystal chandeliers. Even Andre angled his head, trying to read upside down. Naomi let the silence stretch, the tension tightening like a pulled drawstring. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished marble. Canvas sneakers, faded jeans, simple shirt. The picture of a woman every one of them had decided didn't belong. She remembered boardrooms where executives tripped over themselves to shake her hand, the same men who might have walked past her now without a second glance. She thought of the young black women watching this stream, seeing every insult, every smirk. Tonight wasn't just about a room. It was about setting a precedent in public. She'd grown up watching her mother get talked down to by people in uniforms and name tags, people who believed their job titles gave them the right to humiliate her. Now, years later, Naomi had sworn that if she ever had the power, she would not let those moments slide. This lobby, this staff, this night. It was the test of that vow. Around her, the lobby hummed with a brittle energy, as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for the verdict. In a quiet corner, a teenage girl tugged on her father's sleeve. "Dad, are they really treating her like this? And she owns the place," she whispered. Her father didn't answer, eyes fixed on Naomi. The Whitmores stared at the floor. The businessman from 2819 watched with open admiration. Jessica's livestream comments flew past faster than she could read them. "This is why representation matters. I hope she sues everyone. This better end with pink slips." Naomi absently adjusted the edge of the email stack. Trevor stood frozen, somewhere between outrage and panic. His brain buzzed with half-formed excuses, miscommunication, protocol, concern for safety, but none of them sounded convincing, even in his own head. Linda felt suddenly too hot in her blazer, sweat gathering at the back of her neck. She had prided herself on being professional, on trusting her instincts. Now confronted with the cold, printed evidence of who Naomi was, those instincts looked a lot like prejudice in a very public form, one that corporate clearly monitored. Andre's training manual had never covered this scenario. Viral discrimination scandal, majority owner standing in sneakers, and his own name potentially tied to the mess. He replayed the last 10 minutes, wondering if he'd stepped wrong simply by not stopping Trevor sooner. He glanced at Naomi, then at the phones, then at the exit. Walking away wasn't an option. Not anymore. Naomi tapped the email stack once, a soft sound in the quiet. It was almost time for Tokyo. Almost time to decide their fate. Jessica knew she was streaming something that would be replayed on news segments and TikToks before sunrise. "Y'all, this is history," she breathed. "They really picked the wrong woman tonight." Comments shouted, "Screen record, tag AA Clue, tag at AACP, tag every journalist you know." Someone typed, "Imagine thinking a black woman in sneakers can't be rich in 2025. Another, "Dress code for respect, billionaire or get out." On a nearby couch, a guest muttered, "I hope corporate cleans house after this." Naomi could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on her, judging, cheering, scheming, worrying. She'd been underestimated her entire life, in classrooms, in investor meetings, even in the early days of Carter Holdings when bankers assumed she was someone's assistant. But few moments had distilled that underestimation as vividly as this one. Her own employees, in her own building, debating whether she could possibly afford a room. It would have been almost funny if it weren't so infuriatingly predictable. She exhaled slowly, letting her frustration sharpen into something more useful. Anger alone wouldn't fix a broken culture. Policy and consequences would. And stories, public, undeniable stories, would do what memos never could. This was one of those stories. Her phone vibrated again with a calendar alert. Nakamura Industries. Video conference. But 12 a.m. "Right on time," she murmured. Trevor flinched at the sound of her voice, as if it pulled him out of a nightmare he'd hoped was temporary. He opened his mouth, desperate now. "Miss Carter, I swear, If we had realized, if someone had told us you were what? Naomi asked. Worth respecting? Worth listening to? Worth believing? The question hung there, heavy and unforgiving. Linda tried a different tactic. We were only following security protocols, she said, clinging to the phrase like a life raft. We have to be careful with high-value bookings. Fraud is a real issue. Naomi's eyebrows lifted slightly. Interesting. Tell me, do you talk like this to everyone? The businessman from 2819 let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Funny, he said. I checked into a suite in ripped jeans and a hoodie last month. No one asked me for extra proof that I look like I could pay. A ripple of discomfort moved through the watching crowd. Chloe swallowed, remembering the dozens of times she'd waved through wealthy white guests with barely a glance at their IDs, relying only on last names or the brand of their luggage. Naomi glanced at the clock again. 12 a.m. The call would be dialing in any second. She picked up the email chain and spread the first page so the bold subject line was visible to anyone paying attention. Her voice remained even, but there was a new edge beneath it, steel under silk. Whatever happened to Trevor and the others tonight would be documented, formal, and probably swift. But before she swept the board, she wanted them to understand why she had walked onto it herself. She could have handled this from a penthouse in another city, or from a private office during daylight hours. Instead, she'd chosen the midnight shift at one of their flagship properties, the shift corporate rarely watched closely. She'd chosen to show up without a blazer or entourage, to see exactly how her employees treated someone who didn't look like money on first glance. It hadn't taken long to get her answer. She rested her hand lightly on the printed emails, feeling the weight of every line. Her assistant had warned her she was too busy for undercover field trips, especially on the eve of a major international deal. But Naomi knew better. Numbers on quarterly reports told one story. Moments like this told another. A brand could spend millions on marketing campaigns about inclusion and diversity, but it was what happened at the front desk at midnight that defined it. She wasn't just here as a guest denied a room. She was here as the owner deciding who deserved to stay. Naomi lifted the first page of the email chain so the bold line was unmistakable to anyone close enough to read. Subject: Systemic Discrimination Concerns. Sterling Crest, Chicago Night Shift. Her grip tightened slightly. Before I joined my call with Tokyo, she said, her gaze sweeping Trevor, Linda, Chloe, Andre, and the watching guests. Let me explain the reason I flew here tonight instead of heading straight to our Tokyo partner. Discrimination complaints, Sterling Crest, Chicago. Priority review. 47 formal grievances in 90 days. Naomi's voice stayed steady as she explained. 47 guests who'd felt pushed out, judged, or mistreated inside this lobby. Reports of biased assumptions, unequal treatment, outright hostility. She fanned through the bundle of pages, paper whispering against paper. Guest accounts like, staff acted like I didn't belong. Assumed I couldn't cover my bill. Commented on my looks, she said. And my favorite, manager asked if I was sure I was in the right hotel. Naomi lifted her gaze and pinned Trevor with it. So I flew here to see it with my own eyes, she said. You've been very helpful with the demonstration. Truly. Jessica's livestream counter climbed past 12,000. Emojis and furious comments poured up the screen. Screenshots were already circulating on local news feeds and community pages. Hashtag Sterling Hotel Racism started trending across Chicago's social platforms, dragging Sterling Crest's polished brand image through digital mud as the lobby watched the disaster unfold in real time. Local reporters' accounts began reposting Jessica's stream, adding captions about alleged discrimination at a luxury hotel. The hashtag burned hotter with every share. Trevor tried one last desperate pivot. "Ma'am, this is clearly a misunderstanding," he pleaded. "If you could just overlook this one situation." Naomi's phone rang. Nakamura Industries. Tokyo flashed on the screen. She answered without breaking eye contact with him. "Nakamura-san, yes. I'm ready. I'm in the middle of the audit I mentioned." "I'll have a full report for tomorrow's board session," she said, listening as the line crackled softly. "Yes, it's worse than projected. The discrimination issues are deeper than our initial analysis suggested," she continued. "But I'm rolling out a comprehensive response effective immediately." Trevor's complexion shifted from flushed red to paper white to a queasy hospital green. Behind the desk, Linda quietly cried, mascara clumping at the edges of her lashes. Andre remained statuesque, hands still hovering near his radio like a reflex he couldn't quite release. Naomi ended the call and surveyed the lobby. The crowd had swelled to nearly 20 guests scattered across velvet chairs and marble edges, phones raised like tiny spotlights. Every angle was captured, every word archived. "Now then," Naomi said, reaching for her laptop, "let's talk about what happens to your jobs from this point forward." She laid the computer on the counter and snapped it open. The room stilled. Even the air conditioning hum seemed to quiet, as if the building itself leaned in to listen. Naomi connected her laptop to the lobby's mounted display. The Sterling Hotels Group logo appeared first, crisp and corporate, followed by the title slide, Operational Audit, Chicago Flagship, December 17th, 2025. She glanced toward Trevor and Linda. "Let's walk through some basics," she said, her voice carrying that grounded authority of someone who'd built entire companies and dismantled failing ones. No shouting, no theatrics, just precision. It felt less like a confrontation and more like a boardroom briefing that happened to include an audience of thousands. Her tone wasn't spiteful. It was worse for them, professionally serene. Trevor watched the screen, dread crawling up his spine as the deck advanced. This wasn't humiliation anymore. This was documentation. Each slide was another nail in the coffin of his career, hammered in live for an online crowd. No private HR meeting, no quiet warning. His entire professional record was being unpacked on a 10-foot screen, accompanied by real-time public commentary and a digital chorus demanding accountability. The first slide appeared, bold white numbers on a charcoal background. Sterling Crest, Chicago. Monthly revenue down from 1.8 million to 1.2 million over 12 months, Naomi read. Guest satisfaction average, 2.3 out of 5. Luxury standard, 4.2. Annual staff turnover, 89%. A low murmur rippled through the lobby. "This data isn't random," she added. "It tells a clear story. A property where customers feel unwelcome, employees burn out or quit, and leadership has lost control of day-to-day hospitality fundamentals." She clicked to the next slide. Graphs dipped like sky slopes. "This," Naomi continued, "is what it looks like when bias and arrogance go unchecked. Guests stop returning. Good staff leave. Those who stay mimic the worst behavior." Linda clutched the marble counter, fingers blanching as the numbers stared back at her. She'd skimmed some of these figures in email summaries, but seeing them projected this way, with faces attached, made the failure visceral. There was nowhere left to hide behind euphemisms. "Oh, Trevor Lang," Naomi said, finally turning from the screen to face him. Night manager. Employee ID 4471. Current salary, $54,000 a year. She tapped her trackpad. A new slide appeared. In the last 6 months, 23 formal complaints specifically detail interactions with you. Trevor's jaw slackened. "That can't be right," he stammered. "Somebody would have—" "You were informed," Naomi cut in smoothly. Another slide popped up, thick with bullet points. 17. Written warnings in your file. 4 separate coaching attempts from your supervisor. Your most recent performance review, she continued, 1.8 out of 5. She let the silence linger, giving the numbers time to land. Your team's guest satisfaction scores are the lowest of any night shift in our North American portfolio. The words were clinical, but the impact was brutal. Jessica's viewer count ticked higher. Screenshots of Trevor's frozen, panicked expression raced across social media. In one corner of the lobby, someone whispered, "How did he even keep this job?" The question hung in the air, damning. Guests repeatedly described feeling unwelcome, scrutinized, and singled out during your shift, Naomi said. And here we are tonight, watching you replay the pattern in high definition. Jessica's live stream broke. 15,000 viewers. The chat rolled so fast it was unreadable. A waterfall of fire emojis, stunned reactions, and captions like, "She brought receipts," "Career speedrun," "Hired to fired," and "This is better than cable." Naomi pivoted toward Linda. "Now let's talk about management support," she said, "because none of this happens in a vacuum." Linda Park, assistant manager, Naomi read. Employee ID 4203. Annual compensation, $61,000. Another slide. 19 guest complaints in 6 months. 7 failing mystery shopper visits out of 8. Linda's breathing grew shallow. She'd known about a handful of upset guests, sure, but 19? She'd told herself most of them were unrealistic or difficult, that the guests were too sensitive or not our target demographic. The neat bullet points on the screen suggested a different narrative, one where she was a central character, not a bystander. Your mandatory diversity training is 8 months overdue, Naomi continued. Your customer service certification expired last year and was never renewed. She clicked again. 4 disciplinary notes for inappropriate guest interactions. Another slide transitioned in, showing a pattern of complaints across shifts. "This isn't about a single bad night or personality clash," Naomi said. "It's a consistent, documented pattern of discrimination that poisoned this hotel for guests and staff." Her words were calm, but the indictment was total, layered, detailed, undeniable. Naomi stepped away from the display, closer to the counter, but her voice carried to every corner. "When Carter Holdings acquired Sterling Hotels 6 months ago," she said, "this property was flagged by legal as our highest risk for discrimination lawsuits." A slide showed red warning icons hovering over Chicago. Potential liability estimated at $2.3 million from active cases alone. Trevor tried to jump in. "Those numbers must be exaggerated," he protested. Naomi didn't even glance at him, advancing to the next slide instead. 3 federal cases are already moving forward, she said. If we lose, settlement projections climb to $5.7 million, and that's assuming no further claims. Naomi gestured toward Jessica's streaming phone. Tonight's performance, with more than 15,000 witnesses and growing, just expanded that exposure considerably. The businessman from room T819 shook his head slowly. I've spent over 20 years in corporate advisory, he said to no one in particular. I've never watched a more thorough live takedown of bad management. This is surgical. Another slide materialized, outlining the org chart. Here's the reporting chain, Naomi said. Trevor reports to Regional Director Janny Dawson, Janny to Vice President Miguel Carter, Miguel to Executive VP Sarah Kim, all of them to me. She waited, letting the structure sink in. So when you sneered at me tonight, Trevor, you weren't just insulting a random traveler. She swept her gaze over the room. You chose to publicly demean the controlling owner of your company in front of witnesses and on a viral live stream. Every person watching now ties Sterling Hotels to what they've seen here. Racial bias, class bias, outright humiliation, Naomi added. Trevor's hands shook. Sweat dotted his forehead despite the cool air. Please, he said weakly. I've got a family, a mortgage. I honestly didn't realize who you were. You didn't know I was the owner, Naomi agreed. But you absolutely knew I was a person. You still chose mockery over respect. Every insult tonight was deliberate, rooted in your own prejudices, not ignorance of my title. She tapped a key, and the familiar screenshot of the handbook appeared again, blown up on the screen. Section 14.3, Naomi said, immediate dismissal for discriminatory behavior, no severance, plus personal liability for reputational harm. She shut the laptop with a soft click and stepped into the center of the lobby. Under the chandeliers, she no longer looked like the woman in faded jeans Trevor had tried to chase out. She looked exactly like what she was, a CEO used to steering billion-dollar decisions. Trevor Lang, Linda Park, Naomi said clearly, you have 3 options and I need your answers now. She raised one finger. Option 1, immediate resignation. You walk out tonight. I agree to neutral references that do not mention this incident. You salvage what you can of your careers. A second finger. Option 2, termination for cause. Discrimination attached to your record. No reference from Sterling. Potential civil claims for brand damage. A third. Option 3, full-blown corporate investigation. That means months of HR interviews, subpoenas, depositions, media coverage, search results with your name side by side with racism forever, she continued. The lobby went utterly silent. Even Jessica's chat appeared to slow, as if thousands of people collectively held their breath. You have 60 seconds, Naomi said, checking the time. I still have 3 more properties to audit tonight. I don't have room in my schedule for drawn-out negotiations over consequences you created yourselves. Trevor swallowed hard, throat working. When he finally spoke, his voice scraped. There has to be another way, he pleaded. Some private arrangement. I've given 3 years to this place. Holidays, double shifts, covering everyone else's gaps. Naomi slipped another thick folder from her portfolio. This, she said, is every documented issue tied to your name. She opened it, pages fanning out like a deck of damning cards. Most guests never pushed their complaints. They decided fighting a big company wasn't worth the stress. They just stopped coming, she continued, and told their networks to avoid Sterling. Inside the folder, printed emails and forms filled clear sleeves. Comments like, staff acted like I didn't belong. Manager implied I couldn't pay. He joked about my appearance, and he asked if I was sure I was in the right place. Linda lurched forward, mascara streaks cutting lines down her cheeks. Ms. Carter, I'm begging you, she said. I thought I was backing up my supervisor. I didn't realize it would go this far. Linda, you're not a teenager taking bad advice, Naomi replied evenly. You both made deliberate choices. The fact that I own this chain is incidental. A black woman in jeans was enough for you to switch into attack mode. If it hadn't been me, it would have been another black guest whose only crime was existing in this lobby. From behind the desk, Chloe's small voice finally emerged. What about me? She asked. Am I getting fired too? Naomi turned to her. Chloe, you're 24, she said. You followed orders, but you also participated. You laughed while your coworkers insulted me. You suggested my card was filthy, diseased. Chloe's face crumpled. I just didn't want Trevor to think I wasn't a team player, she said, tears gathering. I thought going along was the only way to keep my job. The real question, Naomi said quietly, is whether you want to grow from this or stay exactly who you were tonight. Do you want to be someone who treats every guest with basic dignity, no matter how they look? Naomi asked. Or someone who keeps siding with bullies because it feels safer? Andre stepped forward, uniform still immaculate despite the late hour. Ma'am, he said, what about me? I was called in to walk you out. Naomi nodded. Andre, you immediately hesitated, she said. You referenced policy. You pushed for clarity instead of marching me out on sight. That's judgment. That's what your colleagues lacked. She glanced around at the ring of guests, cameras still raised. Andre, you have a choice as well, Naomi continued. You can help rebuild this culture from the ground up, or you can opt out. But staying will mean being part of the solution, not a neutral spectator. The digital clock above the desk flipped to 12:03 a.m. Time, Naomi said, her voice final. Trevor, what's your decision? Trevor's answer barely rose above a whisper. I'll resign, he said. His hands trembled as he pulled off his name tag and set it on the counter. The thin badge clinked softly, a surprisingly loud sound in the hushed room. Naomi inclined her head once. Linda? She asked. Resignation, Linda choked. She unclipped her badge with shaking fingers. I'm so sorry for everything. Your apologies are recorded, Naomi replied, tone neutral. Chloe Mitchell, your choice? Chloe sniffled, wiping her sleeve across her cheeks. I want to stay and learn, she said. I want to be better than I was tonight. I don't want to be that person again. Naomi studied her carefully. Growth starts with naming what you did, she said. Can you do that, Chloe? I helped humiliate you, Chloe admitted. I judged you because of your clothes and skin. I laughed when I should have pushed back. I was cruel to impress people who didn't deserve my loyalty. That's honest, Naomi said, giving the smallest nod. She turned. Andre Phillips, your decision? Andre drew himself up. I'd like to stay, ma'am, he said, and help fix what's broken. No one should go through what you did tonight. Not here, not anywhere. For the first time since entering the lobby, Naomi smiled. The transformation softened her features, revealing the warmth she'd tucked away under layers of composure and exhaustion. It changed the room's energy, like someone finally cracked a window in a stuffy space. Then we start now, she said, reopening her laptop. Trevor and Linda gathered their things from behind the desk, moving like people trapped in someone else's dream. Corporate would formalize everything by morning, but in practical terms, they were already gone. Ghosts in a building they'd once ruled by intimidation. Naomi switched to a new slide deck and cast it onto the screen. the title crisp and unflinching. Immediate Reform Plan, Sterling Crest, Chicago. "May Chloe Andre," Naomi said, "you're about to become part of the most intensive culture overhaul this company has ever attempted. What you learn here will roll out to 847 Sterling properties worldwide." Jessica's stream hit 22,000 viewers. Local news anchors were now referencing the incident live, playing snippets of the video. Hashtag Sterling Hotel Reform appeared beside Sterling Hotel Racism on trending list. Two sides of the same story. Harm and repair unfolding in real time. Naomi's phone buzzed with incoming calls from corporate comms and legal, but she silenced them. First, the people in front of her. "Step 1. Leadership changes," she said, dialing a contact and putting the call on speaker. "Janae, it's Naomi," she said, when the regional manager answered, sleepy and startled. "Yes, I know the time. I'm at the Chicago flagship, and we have an urgent situation." She paused. "I'm reassigning Kesha Williams from Boston to act as interim GM here, effective tomorrow morning." On the other end, Janae inhaled sharply. "Kesha is one of our strongest managers," she protested. "Boston will manage," Naomi cut in. "Chicago is in emergency mode. Kesha gets full authority to install new protocols and personnel adjustments." She continued, "Call our diversity and inclusion strategist, Dr. Alana Foster. I want mandatory training scheduled for the entire Chicago staff within 48 hours. She ended the call and turned back to Chloe and Andre, who were watching as if their futures depended on every syllable. They did. "Kesha has more than 15 years of high-end hospitality experience," Naomi said. "She's black, she's brilliant, and her specialty is turning toxic workplaces into high-performing, inclusive teams." Chloe timidly raised a hand. "Will I report to her?" she asked. "If you prove you belong here," Naomi replied. "For the next 90 days, you're on probation. That means intensive retraining in service standards, cultural awareness, and unconscious bias. One more incident like tonight, and there won't be a second conversation." Naomi advanced to the next slide labeled Technology Changes. "We're launching something I'm calling the Guest Dignity Program," she explained. "Every guest interaction will be tracked through a new app that captures satisfaction in real time." She lifted her phone, showing a prototype interface. QR codes will be posted throughout the property. Guests can report discriminatory behavior instantly. Those reports bypass local management completely and go straight to corporate leadership, including me. Andre whistled softly, genuinely impressed. "That means no more bearing complaints," he said. "No more intimidating guests into dropping issues." "Exactly," Naomi replied. "We're also upgrading our camera system. New audio-enabled coverage across public spaces, not to spy on staff, but to create clear records. If a guest is mistreated, we'll know. If a staff member is unfairly accused, we'll know that too." She tapped again. Next section, accountability. Every employee will complete monthly bias training. Raises and promotions will be tied to guest feedback, not just occupancy numbers. Any discrimination complaint will trigger an immediate review by an outside firm. She added, "No more internal hand-waving." Naomi paused the deck and looked toward the guests still lingering in the seating area. "To everyone who watched this unfold," she said, "what happened tonight does not reflect the vision I have for Sterling Hotels. But it is our responsibility, and we will own it." The businessman from 2819 rose to his feet. "Ms. Carter," he said, I've been loyal to Sterling for years. I've never witnessed anything this blatant, but your response tonight, that's how you rebuild trust. Not with slogans, by showing your work. An older woman in a silk gown spoke next, voice trembling. I feel ashamed we just sat and watched at first, she admitted. We should have said something. Naomi nodded slowly. That instinct, knowing you should intervene, is part of what we'll train, too, she said. Not just for staff, but for guests when they're willing. She advanced to a slide labeled Community and Bystander Engagement. As part of the Guest Dignity program, we'll provide guidance on how to safely step in or report harm when you see it, Naomi explained. We're also forming an external oversight council made up of local civil rights leaders. Another business card appeared in her hand, which she passed to Jessica. This is Dr. Layla Henderson with the Chicago Urban Alliance, she said. She'll act as our community liaison, making sure this isn't just a PR exercise. Jessica glanced at the card, then lifted her phone again. Can I ask something on the record? She said. Naomi nodded. Go ahead. How are you not furious? Jessica asked. How are you so calm after what they said to you? Naomi considered. Rage takes a lot of energy, she answered. Revenge feels good for 5 minutes. Structural change reshapes lives for years. I'm more interested in that. She gestured toward Chloe and Andre. 2 people chose growth tonight. 2 chose exit. That contrast tells me this overhaul is necessary and possible. Naomi checked her phone. It's 12:15 a.m., she said. Chloe, your shift technically ended 15 minutes ago, but I'd like you to stay another hour. We'll start your retraining immediately. Of course, Chloe replied quickly. I'll stay as long as you need. Andre, Naomi continued, please escort Trevor and Linda out. Collect their badges, key cards, any company property. When you're done, we'll map out your new responsibilities in guest relations. Yes, ma'am, he said. I've got it. Naomi turned back to the remaining guests. The penthouse is finally ready for its actual occupant, she said dryly. But honestly, after tonight, I might rest easier knowing change is already in motion. She closed her laptop and studied the lobby. The chandeliers still sparkled, the marble still shone. Yet the room felt fundamentally altered, like the walls themselves had witnessed something they wouldn't forget. The space that had been a stage for humiliation was steadily becoming something else. Chloe, Naomi said, tell me what the Guest Dignity program means to you. Your own words. Chloe straightened, wiping the last of her tears. It means every person who walks into this lobby deserves respect, no matter their clothes, race, or accent, she said. It means our job is to welcome, not filter, and if I see a coworker mistreat a guest, I speak up. I report it. I don't giggle along. I'm responsible for how our guests feel, and for our hotel's name. Naomi's smile returned, small but genuine. Exactly, she said. Andre, your new role? Andre took a breath. I'm not just the guy who shows up when there's trouble anymore, he replied. I'm part of guest advocacy. I'll be watching for harm before it escalates and making sure everyone, staff and guests, understands this is a safe space. If someone crosses the line, I act. Naomi nodded. That's the mindset we need from leadership, she said. Because tonight proved management titles don't always equal leadership. Jessica finally lowered her phone, ending the stream for the first time in over an hour. Miss Carter, she said, watching you handle this, you could have completely destroyed them. Instead, you laid out options. You could have spent this whole night threatening lawsuits, but you focused on systems instead. "What's your last name, Jessica?" Naomi asked. "Hahn," she answered. "Jessica Hahn." "Jessica Hahn," Naomi repeated thoughtfully. "How would you feel about working in corporate communications? We need people who understand the power of honest, unfiltered stories." Jessica gaped. "Are you serious?" "I'm always serious when I see talent," Naomi replied. "Send your resume tomorrow. We'll talk." The tension in the lobby finally began to dissolve, replaced by a strange, hopeful buzz. The same square of marble where Trevor had stomped on her card now felt like a classroom floor. Somewhere, painful truths had been laid bare, and new rules had just been written. Naomi slung her worn messenger bag over her shoulder and turned toward the elevator bank. "Chloe, Andre," she said, "I'll see you both at 8 a.m. sharp for day one of this rebuild. Get some sleep if you can. Tomorrow, we start the real work of giving this hotel a soul." The elevator doors slid open. Naomi stepped inside, finally allowing herself a small exhale as the doors closed. The penthouse was waiting upstairs, but more important than the thread count of the sheets was the message tonight had sent. Internally, externally, globally. 3 months later, Naomi stood in the same spot where Trevor had ground his heel into her Centurion card. The lobby was brighter, somehow lighter. Sterling Crest Chicago now boasted a 4.6-star rating across major travel sites. Chloe, in a crisp supervisor blazer, greeted guests by name with real warmth. Andre wore a guest relations badge instead of security, listening more than he spoke. Revenue had climbed 34%, surpassing projections. A small brass plaque on the wall read, "In honor of every guest's right to dignity." The Guest Dignity program had spread to every Sterling property worldwide. Internal dashboards showed 0 unresolved discrimination complaints for the first quarter in company history. Naomi knew somewhere, in a classroom far from this lobby, business students were dissecting the Sterling turnaround as a case study, not just in crisis control, but in cultural reset. She pulled out her phone and flipped to video mode, framing the plaque, the desk, the chandelier glow. The same lobby, a different story. On discrimination still happens every single day in hotels, restaurants, retail stores across the country, Naomi said into the camera. "I won't pretend this one victory fixed everything." She walked slowly as she spoke, the camera capturing the transformed staff interactions in the background. "But we've proven something important, that when people choose accountability instead of excuses, change isn't theoretical. It's measurable. You can feel it in the air of a place." She stopped where she'd once been told to leave. She looked directly into the lens. "Share your own stories," she said. "Tell us where you were dismissed, profiled, or pushed aside. Tag businesses that need to hear you. Keep receipts. Keep pushing." She gave a small, determined smile. Follow Blackline Stories for more examples of real transformation, not just pretty mission statements. Naomi lowered the phone slightly. "Your voice," she said, "has weight. Your story isn't trivial. And your dignity, non-negotiable." She ended the recording and saved the file, already planning to share it across Sterling's channels and her own. The Sterling transformation wasn't a fairy tale. It was a blueprint, born out of one ugly night in a glittering lobby. A single woman in canvas sneakers had forced a billion-dollar brand to confront its reflection and then rewrite it. One courageous decision at a front desk had rippled outward, proving that the right kind of pressure, applied at the right time, could move an entire system. "Chloe," Naomi said, Walk me through the guest dignity program in your own words. What does it actually mean? Chloe drew a slow breath, shoulders squaring. It means anyone who walks through these doors deserves respect, no matter their clothes, color, or how we think they pay, she said. Our job is to welcome, not screen people out. And if I see someone on staff treating a guest like you were treated tonight, I speak up. I report it. I don't laugh along. I have a responsibility now, Chloe added, voice gaining steadiness, to protect our guests and this hotel's name. Silence makes me part of the problem. I won't be that person again. Naomi's smile widened just a fraction. That's the mindset we need, she said. Andre, what about your new role? Andre straightened. I'm not just here to remove problems anymore, he replied. I'm here to prevent harm, to step in early and make sure everyone knows this lobby is a safe place. Naomi nodded. Exactly! You're not just security, you're guest advocacy. She looked from Chloe to Andre. What you both modeled in the last 5 minutes is more leadership than Trevor and Linda displayed in 3 long years. Jessica slowly lowered her phone, ending the live stream for the first time. Miss Carter, she said, I've got to say this on the record. You handled all of this with so much restraint. You could have shredded them, and instead, you chose consequences plus reforms. That's extraordinary. Naomi tilted her head. What's your last name, Jessica? Hahn, she replied. Jessica Hahn. All right, Ms. Hahn, Naomi said. Ask your question. Jessica hesitated, then dove in. How do you not hate them right now? How are you this calm after everything they said to you? Naomi considered. Pure rage burns hot and fast, she answered. Revenge feels good for about 5 minutes, but structural change? That lasts. I'd rather invest my energy making sure no other black woman is treated like that here again. She gestured toward Chloe and Andre. These two chose to own what they did and grow, Naomi said. Trevor and Linda chose to walk away instead of doing the work. Both reactions tell me the same thing. These reforms isn't optional. They're overdue, and they're absolutely possible. She checked her phone. It's 12:15 a.m., she noted. Chloe, your shift ended 15 minutes ago, but I'd like you to stay an extra hour. We're starting your retraining tonight while the lesson is still fresh. Yes, ma'am, Chloe said immediately. I'll stay. Naomi turned to Andre. I need you to walk Trevor and Linda out. Collect badges, key cards, anything with the Sterling logo on it. When you're done, come back. We'll map out what guest advocacy looks like in practice. Andre nodded without hesitation. Understood, he replied. From now on, my job is making sure what happened to you never repeats on my watch. Naomi faced the remaining guests. Now, she said, the penthouse is finally available for its rightful guest. She closed her laptop, took one last look around the lobby, and headed toward the elevators, messenger bag slung over her shoulder. Chloe, Andre, I'll see you at 8 a.m. sharp, she called. Tomorrow we start rebuilding this place from the inside out. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing the night behind her. 3 months later, Naomi stood on that same square of marble. Sterling Crest Chicago now carried a 4.6-star average. Chloe wore a supervisor blazer. Andre's badge read, Guest Relations Manager. Revenue at the property had climbed 34%. Repeat bookings were up. Complaint logs down to a trickle. On the wall near the front desk hung a small brass plaque, in recognition of the dignity owed to every guest. The Guest Dignity program had rolled out across all 847 Sterling properties. For the first time, corporate dashboards showed zero unresolved discrimination complaints. Business schools were already teaching the Sterling pivot as a case study in what real culture change could look like. Naomi pulled out her phone and switched to video mode, framing the front desk, the plaque, the bustling, calmer lobby. Discrimination still shows up every day, she said into the lens. In hotels, restaurants, boutiques, and big box stores. This one turnaround doesn't erase that. She walked slowly as she talked. But our experience here proves something important. When people choose accountability instead of defensiveness, transformation is possible. She paused. Share your own stories below. Tag the businesses that need to reckon with them. Don't stay quiet. She offered a small, steady smile. Follow Blackline Stories if you want to see more real-world turnarounds, not just marketing slogans, she added. Your voice matters more than you think. Your story matters, even if someone once tried to convince you it didn't. And your dignity? She held the phone a little closer. That is non-negotiable. Naomi ended the recording and slipped the phone back into her bag. The Sterling transformation had proven something lasting. Systems could change, one courageous choice at a time. Dignity is non-negotiable at any age. If you're in your 60s or 70s, you've probably learned this the hard way. People judge fast, and they often judge wrong. They judge by your clothes, your skin, your aches and slow steps, or the size of your bank account they think you have. In Naomi's story, the hotel staff did what many of you have seen your whole lives. They took one look at a black woman in worn canvas sneakers, a simple shirt, and a scuffed bag, and decided she couldn't possibly belong in a luxury lobby. They didn't care that she had a confirmed penthouse reservation, a valid ID, and a paid-in-full bill sitting in their own computer system. They saw what they wanted to see. Someone they felt free to insult, mock, and threaten with the police. For many older Americans, especially those who lived through segregation and open discrimination, that scene may feel like déjà vu. You may remember being followed in department stores, questioned at banks, or spoken to, like you were ignorant simply because of your race or your work clothes. And now, some of you feel a different kind of sting. Younger people talking over you at the doctor's office, impatient cashiers sighing when you ask a question, tech staff acting like you're in the way. When the night manager ground Naomi's black card into the marble and called her trash, it wasn't just about money. It was an attempt to crush her sense of worth. But Naomi did something many elders will recognize from their own long lives. She held her ground. She didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't beg. She stood there like an old oak tree that has weathered too many storms to tremble at one more gust of wind. She knew exactly who she was and exactly what she owned. When she finally laid her business card, the performance review, and the acquisition papers on the counter, she wasn't showing off. She was simply bringing the truth into the light. For older readers, her column is a powerful reminder. Your dignity does not come from fancy clothes, a perfect body, or a big balance in the bank. It comes from knowing, deep in your bones, I matter. You have lived through wars, recessions, civil rights marches, family losses, and quiet victories nobody else even knows about. A rude clerk or a smug manager cannot erase that. Naomi's story whispers to you very clearly. No matter what anyone calls you, Your dignity is not up for negotiation, not at 25, and certainly not at 75. Real leadership isn't loud, it's steady and just. Over the decades, you've seen all kinds of leaders. Some were teachers, pastors, supervisors, or elected officials. Some inspired you, others disappointed you. Naomi's story lays out the contrast in one hotel lobby, like a scene on a stage. On one side, we have Trevor, the night manager. He used his small slice of power the way a bully uses a loud voice. He made jokes about Naomi's clothes, hinted she was a scammer, and tried to impress guests by kicking someone beneath him. Many older Americans have met that type before. The boss who talks big, the official who throws around their title, the person who loves rules when they can use them to put someone down. On the other side, we have Naomi, quiet, watching, absorbing every insult. No badge, no blazer, no special name tag. Just a woman in jeans and sneakers with a laptop, a portfolio, and a long memory. When she finally revealed she was the majority owner of the entire hotel chain, she could have exploded. Some of you might feel deep down that you would have. After a lifetime of being underestimated, who wouldn't be tempted to say, "Do you know who you're talking to?" But Naomi did something wiser. She turned that lobby into a classroom. She projected the numbers, revenue dropping, ratings sinking, complaints piling up. She read from the employee handbook that the staff had ignored. She named the behavior clearly: discrimination, not misunderstanding. And then she did something many grandparents and elders will recognize from raising children and managing households. She offered clear choices with clear consequences. Resign with a neutral reference. Be fired for cause. Or face a full investigation with your name tied to racism in every search result. That is what real leadership looks like. Not a temper tantrum, but accountability. Not revenge, but responsibility. Naomi also noticed who was willing to grow. Chloe, the young clerk who giggled along with the cruelty, admitted what she had done and asked for a chance to change. Andre, the security chief, trusted his instincts, listened, and chose to help rebuild the culture instead of protecting bad behavior. Older Americans know this difference. Well, some people cling to their pride. Others swallow their pride and become better human beings. For those in their later years, Naomi's choices may stir memories. The time you spoke up in a union meeting, challenged a church policy, or told a family member, "That's not how we treat people in this house." The lesson is simple and timeless. Titles don't make leaders. Character does. And even now, with gray hair and grandkids, your steady voice in a store, a clinic, a town hall, or a family gathering can still be the leadership that changes the room. From one night of pain to a legacy of protection. If you've lived long enough, you know that lots of people promise change when a crisis hits. There's a press release, a few meetings, maybe a training session, and then everything slides back to the way it was. That's why the last part of Naomi's story matters so much. She refused to let this be just a viral moment or a public shaming. She turned one ugly night into the blueprint for a better system. Instead of stopping with 2 resignations and a few apologies, she built the Guest Dignity Program. She put QR codes and feedback tools all over the property so guests could report discrimination as it happened without having to fight with the local manager. She installed better cameras and insisted that complaints go straight to corporate leaders, including herself. She tied promotions and raises to how people treated guests, not just how many rooms they sold. And she brought in outside experts and community leaders, people with no reason to cover things up. Older Americans understand this way of thinking. It's the difference between patching a leaking roof and rebuilding the structure so the house can stand for another generation. Naomi wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting every guest who would ever walk into a sterling lobby, especially the ones who look like they don't belong in marble and crystal. 3 months later, the results showed up where even doubters have to pay attention. In numbers! Ratings climbed, revenue grew, complaints dropped, but beyond the charts, something else changed. Chloe, once the nervous clerk who giggled along with the cruelty, now wore a supervisor's blazer and used her position to protect guests instead of judge them. Andre's badge no longer said security, but guest relations manager. His job became less about removing problems and more about making sure people felt safe and respected. And Jessica, the young woman who started by filming the incident on her phone, ended up invited into the company to help tell truthful stories and keep the public conversation going. Many older readers will see a bit of hope in that. The younger generation is not just complaining. Some of them are stepping up to build better systems if someone gives them a chance. For those of you thinking about the legacy you'll leave behind, Naomi's example is clear. Legacy is not only a house, a savings account, or a box of keepsakes. It is the habits and protections you help build. Maybe you teach your grandchildren to speak up when a classmate is bullied. Maybe you write a letter when a store treats you or someone else unfairly. Maybe you support businesses that take discrimination seriously and avoid those that shrug it off. Your actions, even now, send a message about what is acceptable in this country. Naomi stood in that lobby months later, looking at a small plaque that read, "In recognition of the dignity owed to every guest." In a way, that plaque belongs to every person who has ever said, "This is not right," and refused to back down. If you have ever spoken up, or if you decide to start now, you are part of the same story. One hard night can become the seed of decades of protection. If someone is brave enough to turn pain into policy, you still help write America's next chapter. At this stage of life, it can feel like the world is rushing past you. New phones, new slang, new headlines every hour. It's easy to think, my time to make a difference is over. Naomi's story gently but firmly rejects that idea. It says that wisdom, memory, and moral courage are not out of date. They're exactly what our country still needs. You still decide where to spend your dollars. You still decide when to speak up and when to walk away. You still decide what you will tolerate and what you will challenge. Naomi used her position as an owner to force change in a billion-dollar chain. You may not run a corporation, but you still run your own life. Your story, your standards, and your voice can nudge businesses, families, and communities toward greater dignity. For you, for your children, and for your grandchildren. And if anyone treats you as if your age makes you invisible, remember Naomi standing in that lobby in her sneakers, calm, rooted, and absolutely sure of her worth. You have earned the same certainty. Your dignity is and always will be non-negotiable. Friends, after walking through Naomi's journey, from being called trash in her own hotel to creating a guest dignity program that protects thousands of travelers, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been judged or talked down to because of your age, your race, your clothes, or your wallet? If you had Naomi's power for one day, what changes would you make in the places you visit? Stores, clinics, hotels, even churches. Share your stories in the comments, hit like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and invite a friend so we can keep learning and changing together.